Hi guys, it's been a long time it feels like, but sometime not at all. Um, do I like this pointer? I always have my hair tied in a pointer after this class or during class. Anyways, um, I figured what now would be a good time to discuss what really consumes me a lot of the time during this night. Like it's dark all the time these days, right? It's almost October. September, October, it gets darker, and I don't know if you know that about me, but I suffer from seasonal affective disorder, SADS. So when it gets dark, I just turn off. So, um, one thing that I realized that would explain, I'm probably gonna write a blog about this at the same time, but one thing that I've noticed when I'm getting into this like different, it's like totally different side to me. I'm like not up and happy. I'm like really melatonin, melatonin. um, but like I'm really like more subdued, I guess. One of the things that I do is get into really weird news articles, I suppose you could say. And I for this video, I did do a little bit of research. Not extensively because for me, I know when a story has affected me. So when I was thinking like, oh, I should probably make a video of that, as you can see, 5 stories that really affected me. Um, that's my PC way of saying really fucked me over. So, um, there are a few of them are like, oh yeah, this one clearly, but there's more that I was not sure about, so I had to look it up a little bit more. But as you will see, I will add all the annotations and everything about the stories below in case you don't trust me. But at the same time, I think the majority of these stories are well-known stories, although maybe they're not as well-known as I think they are, but they are well-known enough that they affected me and really messed me up. So let's start with number 5. Again, these are not in order, but they are in the order of randomness. Of 5. You have to trust me on this one, but I don't know verbatim everything about the story, but to my knowledge of this story is about Amanda Todd, who is a Canadian who committed suicide because of a litany of things. She was teased and had to move schools often, and the main one was that she was bullied. She had taken nudes for this guy who ended up in like the Netherlands or something, and he would stalk her, and she would go like from school to school, and he'd be like always like saying, look at these photos, and like totally like ruining her reputation completely. And it was a good lesson in why you shouldn't take news online for anybody. There were just so many background stories about this. Anonymous looked into it, like it's a well-known story, and I think personally for me that was a story that affected me because I I don't want to cry about this, but I really related to her. Most of these stories, as I'm gonna talk about, I don't really have like secondary relations to the people, but they, I hear it, I hear the story, and I'm like, that hits me hard. And things like she sang, she was this creative, all around, really attractive girl, by the way. And I remember hearing her and talking about it in school and in class, and it was something that really, I can't really explain much more than it really affected me. Um, I wrote a song about it. I was overhearing what happened, and I think personally for me, when it comes to depression and suicidal tendencies or suicidal ideation, um, that was the other thing too, is that she had attempted to commit suicide before as well. That's just like, when that happens, I got you. Like, I totally know what you feel like. It hurts so bad. And I know what it feels like to want to die. I don't exactly know how it feels like to succeed in that attempt, but just to know that more or less you're not alone, and I know what it feels like to feel that way. But perhaps not bullied to the extent that she was bullied, but oh my gosh, there were so many things. I wish I knew her personally, and it was like I could have told, like, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. But shit, this video is gonna be really, really long if I like cry after every single story. But that was a story that really messed me up, and that was a story that really messed up because I feel like I could have been there. I could have said something. I could have done something if I'd known her personally. I There was just so much that I found out about, and like researched and knew everything about the story. And I was like, I wish I'd known. I wish I'd been there. I could have. It's just one of those things that, like, I could have done something, but yeah, of course I knew it after the fact. The next story is, I don't know if it's a common one. It's it was on Fifth Estate last year or something. But even before that, it happened in July of like last year or the year before. I can't remember for certain, but it had to do with a murder on Greyhound bus 1170. And in a way, this one also kind of like he was gonna come to BC, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been awesome if he came to BC. But background story on this one is, it's about Tim MacLean, and he was active in like amusement park life, the Coney scene, and he decided that he was gonna go to Winnipeg. On his way to Winnipeg, taking the Greyhound bus, um, there was there's so much about it that was like, sorry, I'm losing it already. Okay, so sorry about Tim MacLean, and I think the person who committed this act was Vincent Lee. Uh, Vincent Lee was not well, just so you know. Uh, but they were on Greyhound bus number 1170, and they were going to, was it Winnipeg or something like that. And one of those buses that like drive all night, so they're like going for hours, almost like a day at a time. And there's like so much stuff about this story. There was like, well, he could have done this or he could have gone there. The thing is that, like, one of the things that Vincent Lee said was that he was gonna go on the bus 24 hours after Tim's bus, but there was a whole bunch of like, this could have happened or this could have happened. But what happened was just the making of a horror story. Eventually, when they intercepted, Tim was all like, whatever, he was like, hey, what's going on? Would lie down in the seat, of course. And it just seems like there's so much about this story, but I guess the main part of it is that um I would preface this saying that Vincent Lee was not well. He was paranoid schizophrenic, untreated, and I guess the gist of this, the horror story element of this was and is that I think Vincent was hearing voices at the time, and he said the voices told him that he had to kill Tim and cannibalize him. basically. So Vince Obese, he had this knife. This knife, he said, was for protection, and and the voices told him that he had to have the knife for defensive measures. So he took the knife out. And he stabbed him numerous times. If you you could question the people that were there first-hand results. There are people that were there that saw everything, that heard everything. There were people that were there that saw everything, that heard everything, and just, I can't even imagine hearing the blood-curdling screams that Tim had. Like, he just was screaming because he was being stabbed to death. And, he was stabbed to death. That's the gist of it. It was just so chaotic, and in the end, I think the voices told Vincent that he would have to dismember Tim completely, so he wouldn't come back to life and seek revenge or something. I don't know exactly what the voices were saying, but that's what happened. He dismembered Tim, arms and legs and neck. I don't know the exact details, except for the fact that one of the things that he did to ensure that Tim would not reform and come back and take revenge was he swallowed Tim's eyes and like a quarter of his heart. But yeah, he totally dismembered him, stabbed him, killed him, and there was so much about this story that I remember hearing about. That it was like a serious what the fuck moment, because my first response to it when it happened was like, oh, I don't even want to say what my reaction was to it at first, but it was just a big case on mental illness being untreated. Because even after Tim was dead and dismembered and cannibalized, Vince Lee was just like ready to be like, okay, ready for capital punishment. Unfortunately, this is Canada and we don't believe in corporal punishment or capital punishment, so he is now under a new alias and just recovering from his schizophrenia. Right now, I think that you can actually find out what his name is currently, but just remembering that story, I remember just the effed up things that I thought about that story. It really messed me up because when I'm thinking about perspectives, if I had schizophrenia, which I don't think I do, but just the idea of like everybody has a different narrative and a different perspective, and his perspective was all like, I have to do something to protect myself from this guy who's gonna kill me. And it seems kind of fucked up that I'm sympathizing with the murderer, but just having a different perspective is just like, well, of course, if somebody's gonna attack me, I would do anything to defend myself. I don't know if I'd go to the extent of cannibalizing the person, but if that's what I believe, then that's what I believe. And just, it's a really messed up story on like perspectives for me, and just how easily I was all like, well, of course he was gonna kill him, so he defended himself. But at the same time, I was like, but that's not reality. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is like figuring out what reality is, because what is reality? What is perspective? What is the truth? And And yeah, it totally sucks because Tim seemed like a really cool guy and he didn't need to die. But unfortunately, it is what it is. The next story is story number 3. Again, I totally recommend looking up these stories because they were really, really good, really, really interesting, and just fascinating. The big story is not necessarily the story. Like there isn't one article about it, but there are continual articles about where I come from, which is like I don't know if it's necessarily where I come from, but Vancouver has a very serious homelessness situation, and we are always about like figure out where to put all these homeless people, and part of them have mental illnesses or there's like reasons why they're homeless, and it's really fascinating to figure out what do we do with all these homeless people. Um, Personally, for me, I came across an article specifically that I can think of in like grade 8 or something, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna solve homelessness, and that's just one of the things I was like, I'm gonna solve it. Haven't done that yet, but I do remember hearing about a child who was like 7 or something, like really young, and he was gonna like help this homeless man, uh, like clean up and get his feet back on order and just go for uh just bettering his life, and he did that, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're doing what I wanted to do. But yeah, the whole homeless issue, I don't really have a whole story about this, but I do know that there are initiatives and everything that the government is doing to solve homelessness. And I do know that there's so many factors and so many degrees of homelessness and reasons why people are homeless. Employ Unemployment, illness, like there's so many reasons. And I do know that it's just not something that somebody who's in grade can just solve. So I do know that that was a big one for me, just because that's where I'm coming from. Not necessarily from downtown east side, but uh walk a few blocks. You're in downtown east side. So like for me, that's just where I live. So for me personally. Um Again, these are not in order, but they are very interesting to compare, because going from like being distraught, being killed, being dead, um, going to story number 4 is kind of like the reverse of that. Because I remember in 2008, I think 2008, I was like just graduating from high school. But even so, I do remember the American election. I mean, I don't know if the American election affects everybody, although you could argue under some pretenses it does affect everybody. For me, I'm half American. Mom's totally all about the election, so it was really big for me. My family, some of them would vote in the election. Some of them would we're all all about it. I don't have any specific stories for the American election, although I just would like to share the emphasis of what Barack Obama's message was. And I don't want to the one thing about the American election or just anything in politics is really a difficult thing to talk about because people have so many different beliefs about it. But for me, the beliefs of 2008 American elections was just hope. Just the fact that we could do something, that we could fix the situation that we're in. And arguably, of course, did he fix the situation? Who knows? I just don't want to put that there, but I do want to emphasize the idea that he was like supporting hope and change, and like the fact that we can do something. Like I was thinking like, oh, we're just stuck with whatever we're given. But he's like, no, let's do something. Let's change life. Let's do something and change the world. And that whole experience for me was like really big, and I was like, wait, we can do something. I can actually actively change. my situation. And of course, it may or may not be obvious to you, but I'm a big proponent for hope. I think it was even before Barack Obama and his whole speech and his campaign. But yeah, I am a big proponent for hope, and so he just was speaking to the right audience. And rounding it up, story number 5 or story number 1, depending on how you look at it, we're talking about the Manson family. So Charles Manson was an interesting character. I do believe he currently is deceased, but he did spend his whole life in and out of prison. And of course, he was a very interesting character. He had certain beliefs and performed certain actions that were really influential and contributed to what people thought of life today. The big story about Charles Manson and the Manson family is that he killed Sharon Tate, the LaBianca couple. There were so many details about this story that, strangely, I started out this whole video with all like feeling so heartbroken about the people that suffered and died at the hands of somebody else. But this was just a phenomenon of Charles Manson and the Manson family. And I don't want to laugh about it, but I didn't know Sharon Tate personally, and I didn't know the LaBianca family, but the fact that Charles Manson could round up a bunch of people, become a family. And of course, it's like the 60s, 1969. So there were drugs involved and just different beliefs going around. Again, this goes back to like your different perspectives in life and how you live life and all that stuff. But he got a bunch of people to become a family and kill some famous people. That sums up the Manson family and their murders. You can totally look into it, and I totally recommend that you do because it's just fascinating and apparently you can argue that like Charles Manson didn't kill anyone, so why is he being imprisoned at all? But there is the whole argument of influence and what he would have done or didn't do because of all these other people, and how everybody had their own place and pose and actions in this. And there was a whole cast of characters. There was what was it called? Helter Skelter, which was the book that Manson wrote, I think. Either or, there is also a comic and a claymation movie about Helter Skelter and the life and times of Charles Manson that was very popular and quite serialized. And just the idea of like, it's probably something even I have to come to terms with, because in the end, as heartfelt as I felt about everybody who I spoke about in this whole entire video, it's still just like popular culture and strangers who I don't know who died or suffered for whatever reason. And it's been serialized and talked about. You can look online. I'm not the first person to talk about crimes and murders. You can look on YouTube or anywhere and find people talking about these crimes that who knows why we're talking about them. But it's interesting. These are the news stories that really messed me up. I probably shouldn't say it, but love X lyrics. Bye.